This episode of Chains is sponsored exclusively by Charlie Foxtrot Brewing. Ask about beers from this veteran-owned brewery in tap rooms across Southwest Florida and Western North Carolina. Thank you for supporting our veterans. Chains, Part 15. Written by Dustin Dhonash. Narrated by Lucy Hillman. The more I moved, the more heat escaped my makeshift parka that I got from the barn. I peered back through the woods to get a measure of how visible the fire would be, but there was no sign of it. The rain was coming down stronger than before. As I moved further away from the house and into the forest, I spotted a drain pipe that was some distance up the hill. The ground was starting to get muddy, and I scraped myself up from slipping and pulling on the thin branches for support. Finally, I got to the pipe. It was dirty, about 4 feet across, and made from the same corrugated metal as almost everything else in this place. It went straight into the hill. I couldn't see the other side. The ridge side of the pipe made it easy to climb in. I got about a yard in and turned around to peer out of the pipe back towards the house. I had a perfect view of the insanity from up here, plus I was out of the wind. I needed to get Chris out of there, but I had no chance of doing that currently. Suddenly, I heard a voice from inside the pipe ask, "Who are you? I haven't seen you at the farm before." I jumped so hard that I lost my footing in the pipe and fell into one of the small puddles that had collected in a low spot. "Don't worry," she continued. "I'm not going to yell or anything." I wasn't entirely convinced, but if she was going to let them know I was here or hurt me, she would have already. "This was just supposed to be a fun party. I have no idea what all of that out there is," she said by way of explanation, before adding, "I'm Chastity." "I'm Hannah. You wouldn't know me. I don't hang out here," I said, before hastily adding, "Do you know Chris?" "Yeah, Clark's cousin. Nice enough. Kind of boring, I guess. He just came back after being gone a while," she replied, clearly not knowing or caring about the danger he was in. Chris being described as boring partially set my mind at ease, at least about his past actions here. It was definitely better than interesting Chris, or Chris with the nice ass, or whatever terms a housewoman might use. Boring Chris was just fine with me. "So you're just here to party then?" I asked somewhat defensively, unable to fully relinquish the unjust animosity I felt towards her. "Not really. My mom wanted to help Miss Leah, and since I got my CNA, I gotta go stay with her. Things have gone pretty bad since her brother got sick. I tried to help, but something about her had changed," she added sadly. Some water had started to stream down the center of the pipe, and we both repositioned ourselves to avoid it. Along with it came an almost sweet smell that reminded me of my dad's car shop. "This pipe is giving me a headache," she said after a minute of silence. The rain stopped. The wind, too, I said, and maneuvered myself out of the pipe, taking care not to slide on the muddy ground. I knelt behind one of the trees and looked back towards the house. They were still chanting. The man with the caged leg still had Chris on his shoulder. "You'll probably need this. It's gonna snow. I heard it on the radio just before I got out there, so I put 2 coats on. I think I'll be fine with just one," she offered as an explanation. As she stepped down out of the pipe, there was an odd crunch underfoot. As a reflex, we both froze in place and slowly looked down. I'm not sure how I didn't notice them before. At the foot of the pipe, there had to be 24 small bird skeletons lying in a pile right where the water from the pipe was leaking onto the ground. "Ugh, gross," she said a little too loudly, and then immediately covered her mouth wide-eyed. I waited for a few breathless moments for one of those maniacs to come barreling out of the bushes, having heard her exclamation. None did. She gently removed her foot from the pile of tiny bones, intensely whispering, "What the fuck is that? How does that happen?" We were interrupted by some commotion down by the fire. A tall man who was bleeding from the head was pointing a huge bat at the man with the caged leg as he put Chris down. If I was going to get Chris out of there, now was my chance. "That's him, that's Chris," I said as I pointed. "That other man, the one with the cabbage masher, is the sheriff, Corporal Ramsey," she said, assessing the situation. "The older woman with the white hair is Miss Leah. Mr. P is the one with the leg brace thing." "The sheriff," I said incredulously, as I saw he and the man with the caged leg begin to fight. My mind reeled for a moment. Yeah, Mr. P has had somebody in the lower part of the barn for a while. That's part of the reason I left. I guess it was him, she reasoned. That would mean that the sheriff was involved in all of this somehow. He must have been the stranger in the tunnels, the one that hurt Chris. This was getting to be too much. Then that means the sheriff is one of them. I'm going in to get Chris, and then we're getting the hell out of here. My car is parked at the front gate, I said quickly, retying a shoelace and gathering my nerves for a final effort. We moved further along the property through the woods to avoid being seen. Most everyone had their attention on the fight between Caged Leg and the sheriff, so it wasn't difficult. Once we got up to the side of the house, I could feel the warmth from the fire. I saw Chris lying in the dirt not far from where the fight was happening. The fact that no one was stopping the fight cemented the idea that the sheriff was somehow involved. We moved out into the light and began a steady walk towards Chris. If they were to see us now, we'd have no chance of getting out of there. Just as we got to Chris, Miss Leah fired a gun into the air and everyone froze. We grabbed Chris and dragged him into the woods while he murmured briefly in protest. He still had that cage attached to his arm, which, aside from being a horrific torture device, did actually help keep it in place during the escape. We were halfway to the tree line when I tripped hard on an old cinder block campfire that was hidden by some grass and vines. I screamed out at the pain of heading face first into the far end of the cinder block circle. I forced myself through the pain back onto my feet. I could feel the blood coming down from my cheek and forehead, and some of it got in my eyes as we approached the metal slats of the fence. My car was just on the other side. We quickly hoisted Chris up and over the fence. Just then, Miss Leah started shooting at us from the side of the house. Chastity immediately bolted back into the forest as I sprinted around the other side of the house to get cover. I heard a couple more shots and then silence before moving away from the house and back into the woods towards the pipe. I could feel tears welling up, partly from the pain of my fall and partly from the stress of the situation. I had failed at helping Chris, I had injured myself, and now I was being shot at in a snowstorm. I had forgotten about the creepy pile of bird bones, and a few of them crunched unsettlingly underfoot as I climbed into the pipe. The strange, almost heady smell from before still lingered. A stiff wind picked up, blowing the snow into my already aching face. I climbed a few yards up the pipe until I could see the other end of it. It turned upwards pretty steeply, which I thought was good. Even if they did find me here, I'd have a huge head start on them. There was a possibility that they didn't see us push Chris over the fence. That was the only hope I had left. Just then, it occurred to me to check for my car keys. They were gone.